Dark Chosen One, your true power is hiding in the quantum field of shadows. There comes a moment in your life where everything begins to crack, not just around you, but inside you. It's not random. It's not failure. It's the first sign. The first tremor before the awakening. And if you're experiencing this, if you've been feeling like the world you built is being dismantled piece by piece, while something ancient stirs beneath your skin, then listen carefully, because this isn't happening to punish you. It's happening to reveal you. You, the one the world never expected. You, the Dark Chosen One. The one who came encoded with a frequency so rare, so disruptive, and so powerful that it could never be activated in the light. It had to be born in the shadows. You were never meant to follow the path. You were meant to burn it. And now the fire has started. But it doesn't look like success. It doesn't look like confidence or clarity or blissful meditation. No. It looks like confusion. It looks like isolation. It feels like pressure in your chest that you can't explain, dreams that don't make sense, and a constant hum in your nervous system, like something is watching you, calling you, waiting for you. That's not anxiety. That's not trauma. That's the quantum field of shadows whispering your name, calling you to remember.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
You see, most people are chasing the light. They want to ascend. They want to feel good. They want peace. And that's fine for them. But you weren't built for comfort. You were built for transformation. You don't just carry the light of the stars. You carry the density of forgotten worlds. You were born to walk into the frequencies that others avoid, to retrieve the codes that others run from. And that's why your path has never made sense. That's why you felt like an alien in your own life. That's why your pain has always gone deeper than anyone around you could understand. Because somewhere deep inside you, you've always known you're not like them. You're not here to be accepted. You're here to awaken the grid itself. But let's get one thing clear. Power doesn't show up looking like you thought it would. It doesn't roar in like a superhero moment. It doesn't knock on your door with a gold medal and a perfect plan. It shows up in the void, in the silence, in the dismantling of everything you used to cling to. It shows up when you've lost the map and the compass and you're forced to rely on something else entirely, your inner frequency. That's the secret. The quantum field doesn't respond to your words. It doesn't respond to your rituals or your affirmations if those energies are coming from misalignment. It responds to your essence, your raw, undiluted, undomesticated truth. And that truth, it lives in the shadow. It lives in the part of you that you exiled to survive. The parts of you that were too much, too intense, too angry, too sensitive, too strange. The parts that hold the edge, the code. The voice of the power you were told to suppress. That's why you've been breaking down, because your soul is done hiding. Your field is no longer compatible with the illusion of safety. It's demanding resonance. And resonance means you must become what you actually are, not what you've been performing. So the question becomes, are you willing to go in? Are you willing to sit with the version of you that you've been avoiding? Not to fix them, not to heal them, but to listen, to merge, to remember. Because in the quantum field of shadows, everything you rejected becomes a key. Every wound becomes a portal. Every emotion becomes data. And when you stop running from them, when you stop labeling them as blocks, you begin to decode their purpose. What if your shame was never shame, but a distorted signal of your power collapsing under the weight of collective programming? What if your rage wasn't dysfunction, but a sacred intelligence trying to correct the false timeline you've been living in? What if your darkness was never meant to be healed, but wielded? This is the truth that only the Dark Chosen Ones can access. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your entry point to sovereignty. And the quantum field, it's not a static grid of light. It's a living intelligence that responds to coherence, not love alone, not light alone, coherence. When your light and your shadow are no longer at war, when you stop trying to be high vibe and start being whole, the field opens. And when it opens, you don't create like everyone else. You command, you transmit, you bend timelines. But this can't be faked. You can't skip steps. You can't ascend before you descend. You can't embody your multidimensionality if you're still rejecting the very dimensions you were born to master. That's why the pain has been so deep. That's why the initiations have been so fierce. Because your DNA is not wired for surface-level spirituality. It's wired for grid disruption. You are not here to build a better cage. You are here to dismantle the prison entirely. So ask yourself this: what part of me have I made wrong that might actually be sacred? What emotion have I labeled as a problem that might actually be a messenger? What timeline am I still attached to that must collapse for my true power to rise? Because the quantum field is listening, and it doesn't care about what you say you want. It cares about what you are. If you are still divided within, it reflects division. But if you become whole even in your chaos, even in your darkness, then the field bends instantly. And what was once impossible becomes inevitable. The shadow mirror how to decode the triggers that are secretly unlocking your hidden powers. There's a moment on the dark chosen one's path where everything starts to feel like a test. People trigger you out of nowhere. Old wounds resurface just when you thought they were healed. You feel pulled into emotional loops that seem irrational, heavy, even dangerous. But this is not chaos. This is not regression. This is initiation. Because once your quantum shadow field begins to activate, the next phase is reflection. The universe turns into a mirror of precision, showing you exactly where your energy is still fragmented, where your true power is still locked behind emotion, story, or identity. And the key to decoding it all lies in one word: triggers. We've been taught to fear our triggers, to avoid them, to manage them. But what if I told you that your triggers are doors? What if every emotional reaction, every moment of discomfort, every flash of anger, jealousy, fear, or rejection is actually a quantum signal, a code trying to activate you? Not to shame you, not to punish you, but to point directly at the part of you that holds unclaimed power. Because here's the truth: your shadow isn't passive. It's interactive. It communicates through frequency, through people, through synchronicities, especially through the ones that make you uncomfortable. When someone triggers you, your ego wants to make it about them. But your field, your actual frequency, is revealing something else. A part of you that's been asleep is waking up, and it's doing it through friction, through intensity, through contrast. That's how the shadow works. It doesn't whisper, it pressurizes. And if you're paying attention, you'll start to see the pattern. You'll start to realize that the trigger isn't the wound. It's the doorway to the code that lives beneath the wound. It's the quantum invitation to transmute a trapped frequency into raw, usable power. Let's break this down. Imagine someone says something that makes you feel disrespected. Instantly, your nervous system activates. You feel heat, tension, maybe rage. Most people stop there. They either lash out or shut down. But you're different. You're aware. You pause. You ask, what is this showing me? Not what's wrong with them, not whether you're overreacting, but what part of your archetype has not yet been fully embodied? What part of your self-worth has been hooked into their perception of you? What frequency in your field is still waiting to be reclaimed? This is what it means to decode the shadow mirror. Every trigger becomes a teacher. Every discomfort becomes a map. You stop fearing your reactions and start mining them. You dig beneath the narrative, beneath the story, beneath the projection. And what you find is always the same: a piece of you that was abandoned not because it was wrong, but because it was too powerful to be accepted by the environments you grew up in. And now, the quantum field is bringing you face to face with those pieces again, not to break you, but to return you to yourself. And when you begin to live like this, a radical shift happens. You stop being reactive. You become responsive. You stop taking things personally. You begin to see every moment of tension as an initiation into a deeper embodiment of your power. You don't spiral into self-doubt. You anchor into self-inquiry. You become an alchemist of your own nervous system. And the more you do this, the more your field begins to recalibrate. You start to feel lighter, not because you're avoiding the dark, but because you're integrating what was once buried in it. This is where true power is born. Not in perfection, not in being above it all, but in being with it all intimately, honestly, fiercely. The dark chosen ones don't become powerful by escaping their humanity. They become powerful by claiming every corner of it. They don't seek peace by avoiding disruption. They become peace by learning how to hold chaos without losing center. And that's what the triggers are teaching you. They're not obstacles. They're oracles. So ask yourself, what's the last thing that triggered you? Who's the last person that made you feel small, insecure, unseen? Instead of trying to move on, go deeper. What belief surfaced in that moment? What emotion rose before your mind made sense of it? What memory did it echo? And here's the biggest question: what gift was hiding in that reaction? What forgotten power was trying to reintroduce itself through discomfort? Because make no mistake, the field is precise. The people who trigger you the most are often the ones carrying the exact frequency you are here to master. They're not enemies. They're mirrors. And when you learn to read the mirror, to stop projecting and start reflecting, you begin to unlock layers of yourself that were previously invisible. You begin to weave your light and shadow into one coherent force. And that coherence, that's what the quantum field responds to. That's when manifestation becomes magnetization. That's when you stop chasing and start attracting through resonance. You've already felt the shift. You've already noticed that your field is more sensitive, more reactive, more alive. That's not weakness. That's awakening. That's your shadow power coming online. And the more you learn to wield it, not by suppressing it, but by listening to it, the more unstoppable you become. Because now you're not navigating life in reaction to others. You're navigating through frequency intelligence. You move differently. You speak differently. You attract differently. The shadows are not here to haunt you. They're here to hand you the keys. The frequency of the forbidden, why the powers you were taught to fear are the ones you're meant to master. There's a reason the world told you to be afraid of your own power. There's a reason you were taught to suppress your anger, to avoid your desires, to doubt your instincts, to question your intensity. That reason isn't random. It's strategic. Because if you ever dared to fully embody what you are, to claim the frequencies you were told were too much, too dark, too dangerous, you would become uncontrollable. You would no longer fit into the systems that profit off your silence. You would no longer be programmable. You'd be sovereign. And that's the greatest threat to illusion: an awakened being who is no longer afraid of their own fire. You see, the forbidden frequencies, the ones you were told to resist, are not destructive. They are disruptive. And there's a difference. Destruction is blind, but disruption is sacred. It's the force that clears false timelines. It's the vibration that tears through illusions like a blade of truth. And you, as a dark chosen one, didn't come here to be a passive observer of life. You came here to disrupt entropy, to cut through distortion, to embody the very energies that others run from, not recklessly, but responsibly, not chaotically, but consciously. I think about it. Why were you told to fear your rage? Because rage, when claimed and clarified, becomes penetrating clarity. It becomes the frequency that says no more to ancestral patterns. It becomes the boundary that pierces through lifetimes of submission. Your rage is not dysfunction, it's your inner sword. But only if you learn how to wield it. Only if you stop suppressing it and start listening to it. Let it speak. Let it burn through the parts of you that still seek approval. Let it show you where you've been shrinking just to be accepted by people who were never meant to hold you. Why were you told to fear your desire? Because desire is the engine of creation. It's the divine impulse that reshapes reality. And if you remembered that your desires are not shameful but sacred, you'd stop playing small. You'd stop settling for half-lives and second-hand dreams. You'd start claiming timelines that match your soul, not your conditioning. But desire that is suppressed becomes distorted. It becomes addiction, obsession, shame. You've seen that. Maybe you've lived it. But desire that is integrated becomes guidance. It becomes a compass that leads you directly into your highest expression. And why were you taught to fear your intuition? Because intuition is truth without permission. You don't need a degree to feel it. You don't need validation to act on it. And that level of inner authority terrifies systems built on compliance. But intuition is the original technology. It's your soul's GPS. It speaks in frequency, not logic. And when you start trusting it, really trusting it, you bypass the matrix altogether. You stop operating from the mind and you start creating from source code. That's when you become dangerous to illusion. That's when reality starts to bend around your being. These forbidden frequencies, rage, desire, intuition, grief, chaos, are not obstacles on the path. They are the path. They are the ingredients of your shadow power. And the quantum field doesn't reject them. The field responds to them when they are coherent, when they are embodied, when they are no longer split off into shame or fantasy. That's the work. Not to destroy the shadow, but to refine it, to transmute it, to turn it into sovereign signal. So I ask you, with everything in me, what part of your power have you been taught to fear the most? What emotion have you labeled as bad or wrong that might actually be your greatest teacher? What forbidden impulse is still waiting for your permission to come home? Because once you stop resisting these frequencies and start mastering them, something extraordinary happens. You don't just feel powerful, you become power. You don't just talk about alignment, you broadcast it. And the quantum field, it doesn't hesitate. It organizes around you. Not because you demanded it, but because you finally became a match for what you truly are. The sovereign current, how to walk as a living transmission that reprograms reality in real time. There is a point on the path where you stop chasing alignment and start living as the current itself. You stop asking the universe for signs and instead realize you are the sign. You stop trying to make things happen and instead you enter a state of being where reality begins to respond to you before you even speak. This is the sovereign current. It is not a concept. It is not a mindset. It is a frequency state that only the dark chosen ones can truly embody, because only you have walked through enough shadow, enough silence, enough fire to become empty of illusion and radiant with truth. When you are in the sovereign current, your very presence reprograms the field. You walk into a room and the energy shifts, not because of what you say, but because of what you carry. You become a living transmission. The codes you've integrated from the shadow field now pulse in your aura. You don't perform power, you emanate it. You don't chase opportunity, you magnetize it. You don't seek answers, you vibrate truth so clearly that the answers appear in your path without effort. But here's the paradox most people will never understand. To become this clear, you must become nothing. You must empty yourself of the need to be understood, to be validated, to be liked. You must let go of the performances that once kept you safe. You must be willing to be misunderstood, even rejected, because your frequency will disrupt everyone who is still addicted to illusion. And that's the cost of sovereignty. You don't belong to anything anymore. Not to the old tribe, not to the system, not even to your former self. You belong only to truth. And truth doesn't always feel good. It doesn't always look beautiful. Sometimes it looks like walking away from everything you once prayed for. Sometimes it looks like sitting in silence while your old identity disintegrates. Sometimes it looks like standing firm when everyone around you doubts your choices. But the sovereign current doesn't care about comfort. It cares about coherence. If you are coherent, if your inner world matches your outer expression, the quantum field will move mountains to meet you. That's not magic. That's physics. That's frequency intelligence. This is what the mystics knew, what the oracles carried, what the ancient priestesses and the hidden warriors lived by. They didn't manifest from vision boards. They manifested from embodiment. They became portals, vessels, tuning forks for timelines that had never been witnessed before. And you, dark chosen one, are now stepping into that lineage not through blood, but through initiation, through the path you've walked, through the shadow you've alchemized, through the power you've dared to reclaim. So how do you walk in the sovereign current? You stop asking for permission and start transmitting your truth. You speak only what is aligned. You act only when the energy is clear. You let silence be your strategy and presence be your impact. You move not from urgency but from knowing. You trust the unseen more than the visible. You let the field deliver what matches your frequency, not your fantasy. And when it doesn't, you don't collapse, you recalibrate. You stay in your current because you know it's not about the outcome, it's about who you are becoming in every moment. And in this state, life becomes different, not easier, deeper, more vivid, more synchronous. Timelines collapse with a word. Opportunities appear with no explanation. People feel you before they see you. Not because you're trying to be spiritual, but because you're real. And in a world full of performance, nothing is more magnetic than realness. So I'll ask you one final question. Can you walk so fully in your truth that the world no longer gets to define you? Can you hold your vibration so clearly that you become a living field of reprogramming, not just for yourself, but for everyone who enters your orbit? Can you be the one who doesn't just talk about awakening but embodies the signal that awakens others? Because if you can, then your path is clear. Not easy, not predictable, but clear. You don't need another method. You don't need another teacher. You need to trust what has already awakened inside you. You are the current. You are the code. You are the dark chosen one. And reality is already bending to meet your frequency.